Senator Fazy, Representative Edmonston, and Representative John Hill, thank you all so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And as you just heard, you know, we have, I think, a freedom issue in America, but we also have an involvement issue. And there's lots of things that I think are going on behind the scenes that people don't know about. Representative Hill, what are some of the things that you're working on in the state of Louisiana?
Well, right now, I think you talked about getting involved, and getting our younger people involved is extremely crucial to actually have them be engaged in what's going on. I was lucky. I have only one son, so he grew up with me talking politics, and my son was not afraid to put a Trump sticker on his truck. I said, man, you're not worried you're going to have a window bashed out or anything? He said, Dad, I can replace a window. I can't replace who I am. And he's been very engaged and involved, and because of that, many of his friends and some of the kids, because of my position and kids I've coached, have become, I don't know if I'm too close or too far. You got to get more kids involved. You got to get more people engaged. If you look at our elections right now, the turnout is sad. That most people have tuned out, and I think you've got to do what you can to try and get more people involved. You've talked to our clerks of court, and they talk about the lack of people working the polls, and how in Jefferson Parish, where I'm from, here in this area, there's almost 300 poll worker shortage. If you can't get people to work your polls, how do you have safe, secure elections? So we're trying to promote that. I know it's not the easiest job to sit there all day and to make $250 or $300. I don't think an increase in pay. I just think more of an increase in involvement. My grandfather was a commissioner in charge and always promoted being involved and being a poll worker. And that's one of the steps you can do, but you've got to get people engaged in the issues. When you go on too long and you forget about the core issues, I wish President Trump would stick to policy. I wish he would talk the border. I wish he would talk about the economy. Those are the things that drive people in this state. I don't get a whole lot of calls about his golf handicap or anything else. I mean, my sister told me it sounded like me and my brother bickering who's a better golfer. Our president, it's an extremely important election. I think people are somewhat engaged, but I can't see, I don't know what the magic can be to get people more involved in our elections. It seems like so many people are disengaged. They agree the economy's bad, but man, nothing's going to change. I said, all you have to do is look back 4 years and see the difference in where we were and where we are today. But I think we've gotten to a point now where you've given away so many things. The other side, if you're the nice guy and you're Santa Claus and you give $225,000 for a house and I'm going to pay off your student loans, that's Santa Claus. And if you're the bad guy and you say I'm going to take some of that back and be responsible about my checkbook, you're the evil Republican that doesn't care for people. It's easy to give other people's money away, and that's what we need to change, and that's what people need to understand. Is that, the money in the state of Louisiana, we actually have to balance the budget. We don't get to print more money. We can't kick the can down the road. I want appropriations. And some of the hardest things we're going to have to do is this coming year, with the tax reform package that the governor's promoted, we're going to have a shortfall. So for 4 years on appropriations, we got to say yes a lot. And it was easy to say yes. But now when you've got a cut, you've got to be a little more responsible. We've had every department in the state in the last month and a half come into our state and tell us what a cut of 1% to 5% would look like and which services would be lost. I asked the Department of Transportation the other day, they said, well, if you cut us 2%, we're not going to be able to clean the roadways as well. I said, worse than it is now? I said, how much more does it suck? I said, we're going to have $2 million shortage on cleaning our roadways. I said, how hard is it to cut around the trash now? Because you cut around things rather than picking it up. One of my biggest prizes in this state, and I know maybe going to go on, is we look like a state in Louisiana that stopped trying. If you come into the state and you hit Louisiana, you look like you don't care. And if you stop trying, I coached a long time, and when your body language dictates a lot, when your shoulders drop on the other team, you know you got it. And we look like our shoulders have dropped and we stopped trying. And that's what we need to change. We need to get people more engaged, more involved. It's the reason Mike and I were talking earlier the reason I ran away and asked me why you run, I said, I got tired of seeing the kids I coach leave the state. And I know you hear that a lot, but I've been saying for 5 years since I came through, it hurts when, I'm selfish. I have one son who's in PT school, and I don't want to see my son go live somewhere else and have to go visit my grandkids somewhere else. And we can't, and I think we've done a lot to increase the opportunity in the state. I think we've done a lot to increase our investment in career and technical education, because not everybody's going to a 4-year college. But the companies that you're trying to attract, they're not bringing workers with them. So if you don't have an educated workforce that can perform those jobs, they're not coming. And
you make some great points. You know, but what I like what you talked about earlier about how do we get younger people involved in our elections? How do we make being a poll worker great again? How do we make getting be involved?
You've got to go out and recruit them. You've got to go out and let them know how important it is to be involved. It's always great to see our college campuses and young kids that are showing an interest. I think what we need to do is become more of a force of social media. As everybody knows, they all look at their phones, and everybody looks at their phone, and everybody in this room is guilty of looking at their phone. You go to a restaurant, 4 people are sitting at a table together, and all 4 of them are looking at social media. I said, it's a lost art to have a conversation with somebody, look them in the eye and talk to them. Because everybody needs to know what happened. Where's my phone? Oh, where's he? Oh man, he's eating designated. That's wonderful. I don't need to know that. You need to become more engaged personally and be able to talk to people and let them know. Because what you see on social media, I hate to say it, not all of it's real. I mean, it's a perception of what they want you to think is real.
I'll make one more point to that before I bring Senator Fazy on for a second, because there's something about Senator Fazy that nobody knows about that we're going to announce today. But to your point, though, you go back a bunch of generations, and when people had to be more responsible, when we didn't have all the freebies, when we didn't have all the complacency, we didn't have all the gifts from the government, people had a stronger work ethic, and they had a stronger tie to community, their community, because it made a difference. Their work ethic was tied to what their benefits were from their own work. Their work ethic was tied to how much they succeeded, and so we had more involvement in our elections as a result, I think.
They did. They took pride in their community, and a lot of times people are disengaged. You walk out your front door, and a lot of people don't know their neighbors all across the street.
Exactly.
Because they haven't taken the time. You know when they see their neighbors? The power's out there. Hey, your power's out? Yeah, power's out. Hey, man, I've had some problems. We just had it with the storm that came through a few weeks ago. Everybody wants to help each other there, but other than that, they go back in their little hole. They dig into their social media and their local community, and they're comfortable not getting engaged with their neighbors. And it's just unfortunate. People just aren't engaged. A lot of people feel like no matter what they do, they won't change anything. So getting involved, they're just going to go ahead and live their life and not become engaged and not be involved. And that's what we need to do, is get more people involved. But you've got to lead them. You need people to go out in the community and lead and talk to your neighbors and encourage them. Yeah, you're not going to sway everybody, because some people are so set in stone, but if you talk to them and you let them know that the image and the perception that the media has talked about the Republican Party being evil, once they get to meet you, you're not that much different than I am. And you can work together to get things done. And maybe sway that person in the middle who is disengaged or not really engaged to become engaged. And
show them how their work ethic is tied to the success of themselves and their community.
Absolutely.
But speaking of success and speaking of social media, but yet even more also speaking about work ethic, Senator Fazy, there was a viral video about 15 years ago that got swept under the rug somehow or another, that you are responsible for, and I think that the rest of the crowd will be interested to hear how a Trump policy, if he gets elected, is tied to that social media event that you're responsible for 15 years ago. Would you please share with everybody what that was?
Yes, over 15 years ago, I went in business myself at age 20. I'm now 65. But at age 50, I had built my business up to where we had, probably at that time about 200 workers. And in my business, we work on pipelines. We keep pipelines safe throughout the country. And when you go to work, you may work 70 to 80 hours a week. And the hard part about it is everybody who works overtime and gets plenty of overtime, they move into a different tax bracket. So all that extra effort you put to make money for your family goes to the government because they keep taking your money. So about 15, it was on YouTube now 15 years, but I was at a Mary Landrew town hall many years ago, and I brought it up, and the crowd went nuts by me saying no income tax on overtime. That the first 40 hours as workers, we work hard all across this country. The first 40 hours we don't mind sharing with the government to make sure to keep us safe and keep our health right. But all the next hours need to be for our families and build a nest egg for our families that we can take care of ourselves. And the incentive that would put back into the workforce by telling them all the overtime they make is their money would be, getting with economists, it would make such an economic boom in this country like we've never seen before since the Industrial Revolution. Because now everybody's going to want to go to work. I'll have all my employees begging to make the overtime. We're going to do twice the production. They're going to have the money to go buy the new car, go buy a new house, put their kids through college, because they're not wasting all our money sending it overseas and everything else, because all they do is all that extra overtime money they wasted. And that was what I did, and I've been fighting it for all these years. So when Trump was running again, I started pressing our Louisiana delegation really hard about my idea. You know, all of our Louisiana delegations, Steve Scalise, Julie Ledlow, Mike Johnson, John Kennedy, I kept pressing their workers. We got to get this to Trump. We got to get it to Trump. At first, they were a little hesitant because they were worried about the negative impact by the country not getting the income off the overtime. But once Trump brought it to the economists, and he liked it because he's a businessman.
Yes,
he understands what I'm saying. So once he brought it to the economists and said it would be true of the economic boom, now you see him at every rally, no income tax on overtime. So that's what I did.
You know, it's amazing. Not only is Trump the businessman, but you're the businessman too, to think about that idea, because not only does it help the workers put money aside, and not only does it help promote work ethic, but it also saves businesses, because a lot of people don't realize that a business has to match the FICA and the SUTA, right?
Right.
You know, on any income tax they pay in overtime, they match that, and they're not having to match that now. They're having to spend less matching those dollars, correct?
Correct, and we don't mind paying the time and a half. It's all a match. So the businesses that grow that much more, like I said, it's going to be an economic boom through this country. We've got to get President Trump reelected so we can do that and have our country moving in the right direction. I've been a Trump delegate all 3 terms. And I went to the first convention. The second convention was, we know, COVID. And then I just went to this past convention, and the electricity through that convention center was unbelievable. So if we can just keep pushing really hard and get him reelected, we'll get our country back on the right track. I'd like to say this because if you study history, our founding fathers said within 250 years you're going to have to take your own country back from your own government, because they'll learn how to control the purse, which they have. And we're 248 years this year, so we better do our job right, because it's not far from the 250 years when we don't have our country anymore.
So, everybody and Central Phase, I'm going to be back with you guys here in just a second. And Kathy, before I bring you back on, I want to talk about what you referred to just now. A lot of people don't realize what the Tipler cycle is. Has anybody in the audience heard of the Tipler cycle? Okay, there's a professor. I actually have this T-shirt on my website. You all can see the Tipler cycle on a T-shirt that I have on my website. He was a scholar, a professor at a university in the late 1700s, and he explained how the cycle of a nation is only about 200 years. And right now, as Dr. Basie pointed out, we're at 250 years. And if you look at the Tipler cycle, he explains how a nation, a country, civilization goes from freedom to growth to prosperity to self-governance, and on to complacency, apathy, and then dependence. And that yourself is the Tipper cycle. You have to look that up. Representative Kathy Edmondson, I've seen a lot of your bills going through the legislature, and you've got a lot of freedom-oriented bills. Can you talk about some of the things that you're working on for freedom and for the prosperity of America?
Well, thank you, first of all, Willie, for having us at Clay, wherever Clay is, for having this. This is a great event. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're
right.
Okay. Well, I'm all about freedom, and I'm all about Trump. I can't imagine being any more engaged than I am. And all I do is run my mouth about him and about the election. And just like Representative Bill said, this is probably the most important election in the history, certainly in the history of my life. And we have no choice but to get everybody out to vote. We know they're going to cheat. We don't know exactly how, but the answer to that, I believe, is getting everyone out to vote that we can. We have North Carolina. We're compromised already there. I mean, I've never heard of that cycle, but that is absolutely the truth. That's what's happening. Our own government really is we're weaponized by our own government.
That's right.
And I know I sound radical, but yeah, I believe it's true. And I believe that as our young people realize that's what's going on, that we have to just really stand up and fight hard for our freedoms and what we believe in. That's the only way that we'll win back. Donald Trump is a patriot. He is so much for this country. I do not understand how people can't tell the difference in what she is and what he is. I mean, he is all about America. And our government now is all about helping everybody else and not helping ourselves. I mean, I get so passionate about it, I can't understand the rationale of people. But he is about what we need. He is about fighting. I believe he's going to take down the deep state like he started. And I think if that doesn't happen, we're not going to survive as a country. I know that, again, I sound radical, I sound harsh, but I believe that with all my heart. So that's really, I mean, I didn't talk about what you asked me to
Oh,
talk
really?
about.
Well, you've had some legislation yourself that really focuses on freedom and liberty. Would you like to talk about any of that?
Well, I think everybody here, I know just about everybody out here, they know that my health freedom is my issue. Vaccines was a real big deal for me. When we finally got our legislation passed, we have no more COVID mandates in the state of Louisiana in any school. And the second piece of legislation that we tried hard to get was, as you know, we all have realized we have an exemption for our children in the state of Louisiana that was not known. It wasn't known by parents, wasn't known by the school systems. So we put in statute that if you're going to send something home, schools, about vaccines, that you also stand the part of the law that says if you will exempt your child, you can. So, what I'm working on now is for our health workers. We will get an exemption really for everybody who chooses not to take a vaccine, because I believe, I'm hoping that this won't happen, but there could be another pandemic that comes along. They're making vaccines every week. I see a new vaccine. And so we want to give everybody the opportunity to exempt themselves from a vaccine if that's what they decide to do. So that's one of the things that I'm working on. And of course, we also, I'll just say real quickly, I think everybody probably here knows about our WHO bill that says there's no more outside foreign, not foreign, but no more the UN, United Nations, the World Health Organization, what's the third one? The WHO, the UN, and the World Economic Forum. So they have no more sway in our state at all. And you'll see that will probably be tested, but we at least have that in place in the state of Louisiana.
You're basically working out that 10th Amendment muscle that has gotten weak in our country, that's protected our states from what the nation does. Representative Bill, is there any legislation that you've worked on recently that you want to talk about that promotes freedom and liberty?
Well, I had one I had a bill that was a living donor bill. And you wouldn't think you'd get penalized for doing a great thing if your son needed a kidney or your dad needed a bone marrow. But the insurance companies could drop you or penalize you and raise your rates solely on the fact that you were a donor. And I met a woman from the National Kidney Foundation, and she told me about this, and it's not a big problem. As we looked into it, it was. And you should never be penalized for doing something, giving the gift of life to somebody else. And that was the only reason. You were in perfect health, but you donated a kidney to a friend. And I recently had a friend of mine, retired military, and he gave a kidney to a gentleman he had only known a short period of time, but he knew he was a match. And he gave, I said, man, that's the most selfless thing you could ever do, is to do that. I mean, I can, some people go, I give it to my dad. My dad had kidneys. My brother wanted to give it to my dad. My dad's like, no, I don't want one from you, because what if you have the same disease as me and then you're short a kidney? And you look at those people that donate tissue and bone marrow, and there's no way they should be penalized for doing something that selfless. So that to me is one of my favorite bills in my 5 years of being in the legislature, of being honored to pass.
That is excellent, and it's an excellent bill, because a lot of people don't realize, when they think of freedom, where we're losing freedom in America, a lot of people just have to focus on the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. And now we talk more about social media and some of the rights that we have that stem from First Amendment and Second Amendment. But all too often people forget about our medical freedom, and people also forget about who Benjamin Rush was. And not many people knew who Benjamin Rush was. Benjamin Rush was one of the founding fathers, a signer of our Constitution, and he wanted medical freedom in our Bill of Rights. And I'll call you one of the extended founding fathers, or it comes to medical freedom there, Representative Ilk, because that promotes medical freedom in our state and our country. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, look, the medical freedom, you get tied down economically with the cost of health care. So one business that where you go in and nobody knows what it's going to cost. And it's crippling our country. When you go in and you see your bill, your actual bill, and then it gets negotiated in, we've got to do a little bit better job, because economically you lose your freedom when you're penalized through something that may not be any of your. It's not your fault. You have an accident or something, and you go to the hospital and you find out, I don't have the right insurance. I don't have anything to cover me economically. So, in this state right now, we're being crippled in our freedom. I'm on the insurance committee. I think, Mike, you're on insurance as well. That's a tough, and Kathy was on insurance with me for 3 years. That's the most important thing in the state. You're crippling people in the state through insurance costs, maybe health care, maybe property and casualty. You see the disasters that happen in North Carolina, that affects our market here. Our health care, we can't get enough people to fill the positions that we need in our health care industry. I've unfortunately been in the hospital in the last couple of years, and you know how short-staffed they are. And the care that we're going to get, and it's only going to get worse as our country continues to age. And unfortunately, we've taken in so many people from outside this country that are guaranteed health care that we can't keep up. And we can't take care of our own, much less take care of others. And we've got to clean up our issues in our own state and country, and our citizens first.
I love that idea there, thinking of our citizens first. Another good example of some of the things that you're doing. Senator Fazy, you got one of your best I guess you're the best ideas out there first, but what are you working on? Any legislature coming up that they might want to hear about? Because again, your ideas help promote involvement in our community.
One of the things, I hadn't got the economics look on it, but just in my district alone, I lost 10,000 people on the redistricting. And so I'm on the go, so I couldn't go further south to grab more people. I had to move north, and we had to do a bunch of adjustments in our districts. But what I was looking at, and when I saw that, I see all our graduates from all our universities just leaving the state, just in groves. And so one of my ideas that I'm trying to get the information on is I would like to give all our employers a tax deduction to be able to have anybody they hire from graduates from one of our universities to get a tax deduction on a % of their salary so they could actually offer more to match the other states to stay here and do that for 5 years. Because I think if they stay here for 5 years, if they're not married, they probably get married. And then within those 5 years, once they get married, they're going to have a couple of children. And so they'll be locked down back into our state to understand that they want to stay here and raise their children here. And until we do something like that to retain our graduates, I think we're going to have a problem because they're leaving the state by the groves, not counting all the other things we're trying to do tax-wise to make our state a stronger state, to keep everybody here. But we need people to come, you know, and being in business, I think we make a lot of mistakes on offering certain things as a competitor. Like in my business, you know, they had a group come in, they gave them incentive on taxes, they gave them incentive on that. But I've been paying this stuff for 30 years, and you're not giving me a break on my property tax and all that sort of thing. So I think we've got to be real careful on how we do this thing.
Representative Edmondson, same question for you. Is there anything coming up that you want people to know about? Because those ideas help get people involved.
Well, other than the health freedom for the workers and the adults exemptions, I'm working on that. I'm working on several other pieces, but I don't really want to say anything about it. I'm not sure they're going to come to pass. But speaking of our colleges and universities, we've got to do something about the woke curriculum that we have. One of the reasons we're losing our kids is because we're a very conservative state, and we are educating our kids in that woke culture, and it's causing them to leave. Now, nobody told me that. I haven't seen data on that, but I can guarantee you that's happening. And speaking of in the future, I'm going to be looking at the budgets for our colleges and universities. I'm going to be looking hard at what we're teaching our children, because it's absolutely ridiculous. Just like FEMA, I was listening to something coming here, and their equitable agenda that they have is causing, or could be causing them to go to, you know, some populations rather than, and it's usually whites, you know, are the last ones to be served. I mean, it's ridiculous. We are in such a fight, y'all, for our nation. It's in every single venue of our country. And so the more that we can educate ourselves, the more that we can talk about it with other people, the more that we can go to groups that are meeting, because there are a lot of groups now, a lot of groups that are meeting that are talking about conservative values and that kind of thing. And, you know, we're slowly bringing our kids and their friends in, and social media. I mean, I just, sometimes I think I'm posting too much stuff. People aren't going to be able to...
Never.
Huh?
Never.
Never? Okay.
It's about being awake.
It is about being awake, yes.
And Senator Faze,
Yes.
you got something on that.
Yeah.
Representative Dilgens after that.
I'm the guy that pushed to get the bill overridden by Governor Edwards when for mutilating our children.
That's right.
And when I did that, I got a death threat on the voicemail on my phone. And that death threat went viral. Somebody leaked it, and it got on X, and 4.8 million views throughout the country. Well, the thing was, that's where I'm going. It was a professor at LSU, and
He fired?
he finally. But what I just have this to say is, for that to be so important to him to give me a death threat, and one of the things that sticks in my mind on how your mind thinks, one of the things he said on the last part of it was, when we put you in the ground, I'm going to make a martini of all the tears of all the conservatives crying over your grave. So how do you even think that way? So, and that's teaching our children, and our grown children. I mean, if we don't change that game soon, I'm on finance committee, and I watch all the, what we're paying all these professors and seeing all that. Look, I love higher ed, but we got to get control on what they're allowed to do and teach our children.
That's amazing. What's even worse is that a liberal doesn't even know how to make a martini because they have tears.
What Mike just hit on is, he said an important thing. He said, I'm on finance. And I know what he means by that, but I'm on appropriations. And you can control the narrative sometimes with the put purse strings to these universities and let them know that we're not happy with the direction that they're going in. One of the things you were talking about, you mentioned what we were doing and what type of legislation we're doing. I think we need to educate our children a little bit better and bring respect back to our law enforcement. I think a lot of times what people see on social media of they doing a police stop or any interaction with law enforcement, that they think they know the law better because they saw something on social media, and it escalates, and the officer now becomes the judge in dealing with somebody on the street, because they say, I don't have to do this, I don't have to listen to you, call your supervisor, do that. What we want to do is put together a video series, and we're working with the Sheriff's Association to end the defense attorneys to say what is legal, what isn't legal, and this is what you have to do to comply with an officer, make their job easier, and make everybody understand what the interaction that you have with law enforcement. I think our law enforcement, it's so hard. Every time I go to visit with a different police department, the first thing they mention is we have a manpower shortage. And most people wouldn't encourage their children to go into law enforcement. Well, without law enforcement, we don't know what type of society do we live in. You need somebody to do the job that most of us aren't willing to do. And many people aren't willing to give the respect to those officers because you've had a narrative on the left that law enforcement doesn't deserve any respect, that they're not on your side. And so my goal is to continue to work with education and to educate kids young enough to do the right things and to interact with our law enforcement and our first responders the proper way.
Representative Bill, great idea. Great idea. I love the fact that it teaches respect. Final question for everybody there. I'd like to find out, because the crowd would also like to know, we're here at MAGA Fest, but we're trying to find out and trying to motivate more people, because regardless, of course we all want Donald Trump to win this next election, but regardless who wins, our fight is not over when it comes to freedom, when it comes to liberty, when it comes to improving our community, because if Donald Trump wins, I think the left is going to fight harder from behind the scenes. You'll see more activist groups out there trying to destroy our nation from behind the curtains, so to speak. So we all have to be vigilant, regardless of who wins, and we all have to be more involved. Could you give any advice to the people in the audience and the people that are watching this show? What advice would you give to be more involved in this election cycle and future election cycles?
One, you can't become discouraged about anything negative that they tell you. And calling names, you've got one side that says they're peaceful and loving, and the other side's hateful, but all it is projection. They project what they do onto us. And you don't raise your tone of voice. I love the debate the other night that J.D. Vance handled himself so well. And he did. And that night they still beat up on him. They said, oh, it's all fake, and he did this. I think that's who he is. And I think in that type of situation, you see how that person is. And rather than listening to what they say, watch their actions. And that's the true thing, is most people just see a sound clip or a sound bite and say, oh, read the headline. There's times you look over the newspaper here and you read the headline and say, oh, this happened. I said, did you read the whole article? Because most people don't. Their attention spans are short, and I think we need to drive our message the same way they do. And sometimes you move the needle in this country, and we can tell you by legislation. We look at some legislation and say, how did we get here? It was before any of us were there. And I said, it's because you gave in and you let them move the needle a little bit every year. And you said, well, that's how we got here, because we said, oh, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to affect that many people. And then we found out, we said, this is terrible. So, God bless you. You need to move the needle back the same way. And I think we've done a really good job. All of us came in 5 years ago, and we worked really well together, and we respect one another. And if you look at what we've done in this state and continue to do, if you want to really help the country out, get involved. If you got the time to go to Georgia or North Carolina, any of the swing states, Louisiana is safe. We're going to be ready. We need to make sure those other states end up being what they do. And the problem, my last thing I'm going to say is I get a lot of mail from people saying, you got to get rid of electoral college. You can never get rid of electoral college. because we don't play by the same rules in other states. If everybody played by the same rules, it would be one thing. But when you have mass mail-out votes and people, to them, the end justifies the means, and they'll do whatever it takes to have their people in charge. So we have to continue to work and fight. And I meet people all the time. They say, how can I help? And I know Roger Villery and other groups have gone to Georgia and gone to other states. And if you have the time, I know they can use the help in those other states.
Representative Hill, thank you so much for being such a rock for freedom and for standing your ground for what's right in our state and our country. I appreciate you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I would first of all say educate yourselves, and along with that, I would say don't believe everything you read. Don't believe everything you hear, because even the mainstream and the cable, you know, it just is not all true. I would also, just like I said, encourage you to get together with small groups of people that are like-minded and make sure that they get out and talk to people. You know, if we all talk to, each person talks to 5 or 10 people, which is not that many, we will really make a difference. And I feel like if we don't stay engaged and know what's going on, to be able to let people know what we're looking at, and just like you said, William, if Trump gets in, it's going to still be a very, very hard fight. If he doesn't get in, I can't even imagine. I need to know where to go besides this country.
Yeah. The battle's not over.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, it's a fight either way, but I think the Lord has put us where He's put us, and so that we are able to fight. Trump always said, this is happening so that you understand public what's going on, because you're the ones that have to fight. I remember him saying that years ago, and that's exactly what's happening. And so we just need to rise to the occasion and be ready to fight on all fronts.
Representative Lee, thank you for being so amazing.
Yeah, I'm just going to back up a little bit on the history of why I got into politics. And one of it was because when I went out that many years ago trying to push my effort forward, I was deaf ears. So over the years thinking about it is what made me run for Senate. Because I said, being a state senator, it'll help a little bit, because at least I can get a little bit more voice and get it through. It's a proven fact now that I got this message to Trump, which would have never got there if I was just a regular citizen. So what I want everybody to understand is we need to, whether you want to get into politics or not, we have to. You have to get involved. We have to move forward and push hard, because they've been doing it for the last 60, 70 years behind our back. When I saw that video of Hillary Clinton in introducing George Soros to the new way of politics way back in the day, really scares the heck out of you. Look at the difference they've made since she introduced George Soros to the public, and they took and ran with it. So my thing is look, I got 4 children and 12 grandchildren, from 4 years to 20 years old. Of my grandchildren, and I got every one of them involved. I bring them around on the campaign trail. They love it. They get excited. It's in their blood now. I got my youngest grandson hollered, he wants President Trump to win at 6, 7 years old. So the thing about it is we've got to get involved. It's most important that you got to get off the couch. Look, I was running a business and I had a number of people come in, are you crazy to get in politics? I said, I have to, because I'm not going to have a business if it keeps going in this direction. So we have to get everybody off the couch and get into politics.
Thank you all so much.